everyone, welcome to The Graded Escape. I'm Kelley.
And I'm Anna.
And today we are switching things up a little bit. We have titled this episode Real Talk with Kelley and Anna. And while the primary purpose of our podcast is to share information that we have about being former teachers, to kind of guide you in your homeschooling journey, we also thought it would be nice to mix in a few of these episodes where we just kind of sit and chat about real life, right? Like what's going on in our lives, how is it going with homeschooling, just to, again, share that we also do not really have it all together and some of the struggles that we maybe have in our own lives and homeschooling our kids and balancing all of the things that come with being a homeschooler.
Yeah.
So we can probably just start off by asking, like, how's the week going? So we will say that, like, we have just finished the time that we're airing this episode, or recording this episode, rather. It is the weekend after Thanksgiving, so we made it through Thanksgiving.
We did. Neither of us had to host.
We did not host, which was nice. Yep, we both went to relatives, which I feel like always, it's a nice thing that you don't have to host, right? Because you don't necessarily have a bunch of people in your house. Yeah. You don't have the stress of, making everything look just right, or you prepping and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, sometimes it's nice to host because then you don't have to go anywhere, right? Yeah. When everyone leaves, you're still like at your house, and you don't have to.
Or the leftovers.
People
keep asking me, like, are you eating your leftovers? And I'm like, well, I didn't really get to take leftovers because to be fair, my mom had offered to make me a plate and bring it down the next day, but she had a lot of people staying over, and so I think they ate leftovers, later on that day, and then she made a soup and stuff. So I do anticipate at some point hosting. I've never hosted Thanksgiving, but I would like to at some point. And although I would need some major help with the meal prep, but because I've never done all that food, the turkey, everything.
Yeah.
But that would be something I'd be excited about. Yeah. Like being able to hoard the leftovers.
I was listening to like sports radio or something, and that was one of the things the guy was talking about, was like pros and cons of like going out for Thanksgiving or going somewhere for Thanksgiving versus hosting. And one of them was like, I never feel like I can really eat as much as I want when I'm out or at somebody else's house, but when I'm in my own house, I can just go hard and like eat and then he's like, and then the leftovers. My husband's not a big leftover.
Oh, really? With anything?
No, not really, unless it's pizza. He's not really like a big leftover guy. And then so by extension, I've become a little bit less full of like leftovers. We'll do like a few dinners a week, and then Thursday nights are typically like a leftover night. We'll kind of reheat, but after that there's really not a big leftover person. I think from growing up, and then like I grew up like living off of leftovers.
Yeah, we always had leftovers. Rob's a big, probably anything. Leftovers are fine. He's not a big soup person though, so if I make a big soup, he'll have like one bowl.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I am looking forward to leftovers. But it's been a week. I think I'm coming off of my son being, ill and having pneumonia and, dealing with all of that and spending time in the hospital, and that was all pretty scary.
Scary, yeah.
So, we did like I think I used to back in the day be a little more hard on myself because obviously that week, homeschooling like took place. Yeah. I had, but a lot of this month of November has been like that. My kids have been sick on and off, I feel like almost the whole month. And so, again, beauty of homeschooling is when they're not feeling good, you don't have to do, the work, and you make it up in other ways. But sometimes when there's like a long period of time that's going by like that, I'm sort of like, okay, it's been like, I don't know, over a week and we have not touched anything, because it's like, okay, but try to let that go. I've gotten better at that, but I definitely, this month I had some plans as far as where I thought we might be in certain areas. And it's not that we're like totally that far off, but I do, I thought there was a few things I thought that we would have gotten done that we haven't, but I'm trying to, that's just me being the perfectionist that I am. But I do love, I would say, this time of year, once the fall hits, I feel like, because I feel like Halloween is exciting. Thanksgiving, there's a lot of stuff with thankfulness. We celebrate Christmas, and I know you too. And so like there's a lot of fun stuff with that. And so I feel like sometimes I don't do much curriculum like from the books that we have. Like I tend to just find fun, like teachers pay teachers, you know, like mini units that like are thematic, you know, with because it's so fun. And then after that ends, like Christmas is over and then January hits, and then I just feel like I'm in this major slump for like 4 months. Until like weather gets, or 3 months until the weather gets nice. But like in this time, I do feel like there's a lot of fun stuff to do.
And again, like you said, Teachers Pay Teachers is such a great resource for all of those things of just like, oh, here, do this like addition color by number of a snowman, and kids think that that's really fun. It's so fun. Yeah, for us, it's been a tricky fall. I feel like every month I'm just like, next month will be better. We adopted a new dog at the beginning of September after coming back from a whirlwind of a trip. We were home for like a day and a half, and then we adopted a new dog, which is, you know, my fault, but that's okay. He's settling in nicely, but it's been a big adjustment as far as like, when are we fitting our lessons in? Then it was like, I had all these appointments scheduled, and that's what's like challenged my flexibility a little bit is like, I typically like to get our lessons done in the morning. And then if we don't get our lessons done in the morning, it's like, okay, that we're just not doing lessons because either we're going out somewhere or I have to work. And so I've had to be like a little bit more creative as far as like, well, we took, you know, our dog Champ for a walk in the morning so he could have some dog friends, and then we get home, and it's like 9 a.m., which is typically like well into our homeschool block, and we haven't started yet, but like, oh no, we're going to just start a little bit later, and that's okay. So adjusting a little bit and challenging my like flexibility. And then I've honestly been using the weekends, like Saturday and Sunday. I've been using as homeschool days. Like Sundays we usually go to the grocery store, and then we'll come home, I'll put the groceries away, and then we'll do lessons, because then they usually come here to record, and it's like, all right, we'll fill that time, because I don't really want to be out, especially now with this time of season, like everybody is out, but I don't really want to be out in the general public on the weekends because everything is so busy. And then our weeks get stacked with either appointments or, you know, my daily work schedule. So it's just easier to do it on the weekends. And
I agree. Because a lot of like play dates or, you know, like our book club, like the thing, you know, even like homeschool and meetups and things that are during the week. And so the weekend ends up being a thing. I get, I think this always happens to me whenever we have like a really busy month where like life gets in the way, I guess. As I can't help but go back to, and I'm waiting for the time when this stops happening. This is from like all the years of teaching. But like I go back into that, like, well, if they were, you know, going to school, like regardless of all the home stuff that was going on, right? Like the craziness, the chaos, like one kid's sick, one kid's not, like because we homeschool and we're together all the time, you know, there's like we have to go through all of that together. And at times I'm thinking of my oldest son, Leo, who, you know, went through quite a bit there for a while when I was sick and we were all over the place, and, you know, he was not having his usual structure day and yada yada and all this stuff. And so part of me, like my brain just goes to like, well, you know, wouldn't it have been nice if he was, you know, if he was at school and so he was, you know, had his routine, he was still getting dropped off and getting his schoolwork in and all this stuff. And like, yes, we're dealing with Owen, but we're still like, but he's still getting what he needs, you know. I'll go to that space because it's so deeply ingrained in me, and I'll start feeling this like guilt because like Leo wasn't getting, you know, the same amount of attention or he wasn't getting his schoolwork done, you know, because I couldn't because I had the other one. And so I go to this place and it's very annoying. And in my own head, I'm like, Anna, stop. Because I know that what I'm saying to myself is not the best, and it's not really, it's not what's true, but I can't help but go there. And then when I have like a moment of pause and I can kind of just remind myself, like, no, well, part of the joy of doing this is like, it's true. We are going through life together. And so, you know, there's a beauty to that that's very different. It is a different way of going through. That's why like I can't, people be like, well, homeschooling, it's like, okay, they just do school at home. And it's like, yes, and like, it's really, the more that we're doing this, the more I'm just it is like a completely different lifestyle. And I have to like embrace that more because, and that's why maybe having been a former teacher, that's one of our disadvantages is because I'm so deeply ingrained into like, because I can remember that having students who like, would have a sibling that was sick or there's something going on at home and like they're coming to school and they get that, you know, break at school and they're doing that. And for like our kids, that's not going to be the same because they don't go to that place to do that. So, but that doesn't mean it's bad or they're missing out or it's worse. But it's like in my head, I can't. Sometimes there's like a guilt there, and I definitely was dealing with that quite a bit. The past couple, I'm kind of over it now, and I've sort of reset and everything. And spending time together has been great. Even though when we had our bouts of sickness, we have spent a lot of time just quality time together, just being, in each other's presence, not going anywhere or doing anything because you don't want to spread germs. But, it's just funny how those things like will creep up in my mind at times. And I have to kind of reset and be like, no, but this, you intentionally did it this way because like, yes, that might come up, but that's not the better way. It's just a different way. And, he is getting everything he needs. And if anything, there's probably different things he's experiencing because we are living life together in a different way. I don't know if that ever creeps up for you.
No, it
you had a busy fall too.
Yeah, mine's more like appointments. So like, having to drag my kids to like the ENT and the orthopedic doctor, and so there's that. And I think a lot of the guilt does come in for sure, as far as like, well, guess you're coming with me to the orthopedic, doctor. Right. Okay, grab your Kindles. Yeah. And like my kids are fine if they like bring a book, right, to sit and read. Yeah. But they also, it's not going to keep them as entertained and as quiet as the Kindle will. So, and they'll do like PBS Kids or watch like a movie on Disney Plus and stuff like that. So it's like full blown like screen time, and we do try to limit screens. But I feel the same way if they get sick or if I have an appointment or something, like that is something usually my default because I need to focus on having a conversation with the doctor about my ankle, and I don't need to be interrupted every 5 seconds by Owen, who was asking, 10,000 questions. We're like, oh, actually, I have to go in and like get an x-ray, and you guys have to sit in this little waiting room right here, and I need you to just be sitting and not worry about what it is that you're doing. So we had that, and then, of course, like we didn't do lessons that day because it was a whole big thing going to the doctor, and then I forget what else we had going on. Then we had to go home and let the dog out of his crate and stuff like that. So I do have that guilt a lot of like, we didn't do lessons and we did too much screen time, and now like maybe it would be better if they just were, in school. But I think we had talked a lot in our episode about like socialization, like these experiences. I don't love that they're sitting on their Kindle. Like I would rather them be sitting and reading a book while we're sitting and waiting at the doctor's office. But that exposure to like, I have an appointment and you need to kind of just come along and see what going to the doctor's and an appointment looks like, and
that's real life, They're living in the real life. I was thinking about that too. That's totally, like that's what I was.
Oh, welcome.
This is my new kitty cat Rex, which has also been a new addition. Rex. Okay,
you got a cat.
I got a kitten. So Oh, Rex, how did I know you were going to come on the screen? Hello. Okay. So I go back to that a lot of times too. Is about the like that idea of homeschooling, and the kids are living in like the world. They're not being, shut out in this little, in this environment of a classroom, in this different space. And that that's point of it. And that I want them to be doing that. And so, like when Leo had to, go to the doctors and, be at the hospital with us for a bit, and then he had a great time with his grandparents. He had a sleepover there one of the nights that we were at the hospital with Owen, and like that was all really fun for him and wonderful, and he had a lot of great stuff. And hi Rex, and this little guy's been a lot of fun. You want to go down there? So I just I want them in the real world, right? Because they have different experience, and even when we don't necessarily, because again, I think we're so wired to think of like learning in school has to look this way, and it's like no, there's like countless things. Like when I think of all the things that Leo learned, like one of the days that we were at the hospital between like the nurses and the doctors and asking his dad, who's a nurse, questions and learning about. There was like so much great conversation that was going on and things he was interested in and seeing, and it's just the longer I have really high hopes for myself that in like another 5 years, I will stop reverting back to thinking like that this has to look a certain way, like the classroom, because my best days of homeschooling are really when it's not like if we get more work done than other days. It's if I'm in the mindset of like being with my kids and I feel like we're we're working together, like we're learning together.
Yeah.
It's not so much like, okay, we got through the math pages, we got through the reading, that used to make me feel like the day was more successful.
Yeah.
And I'm slowly starting to feel like, like, right, we like, math for me is not my favorite thing to teach or whatever. Right. And so, like, did we have math pages to do, that was practicing place value up to 100? Yes. But today what we did was we had our blocks out and we were making numbers and changing things around. Did we get to the workbook pages? No, but I actually feel like we did way better learning just talking while we were, playing with the manipulatives today and making different. So I don't know. It's funny how it's starting to shift for me a little bit. And I'm almost like, what? We don't need to do the work. We don't need to do the worksheet. Yeah. I'm not saying you don't ever do worksheets, but it's like I'm slowly realizing like that doesn't, because in the classroom, that's the case a lot of times is like the product, the assessment, what you can show for it. And I get why it has to be that way because it's one teacher and however many kids, so it has to. But homeschooling doesn't. So if I don't have that, that packet of math problems done because we did it totally different, that doesn't mean that we didn't get it done. Right. We did, and I just, I'm sometimes that's sort of changing for me a little bit slowly. I wish it would happen faster, and then I could
way ahead of where I am because I'm still very much like I feel like successful if I can like write down like we did this, we did this.
I know.
Yeah, there's a lot of guilt that I feel around like with the adjustments that we've had as a family as far as like adding a new dog and just that whole thing and trying to make things work as far as prioritizing, play dates and just work schedule and stuff. Like we're not getting as much of those other like subjects. So like geography or history or science and even like writing. I know we've had lots of conversations and we definitely are going to have some episodes talking about writing.
Yeah.
Because it's an area of struggle for me, whereas you said math, mine's writing. Mm-hmm. So like, I feel guilty because I'm like, well, we're doing, our math, we're doing our pinwheels and we're doing our reading, like our, comprehension and stuff like that. But then what about geography or what about history? And those are the ones that I feel like get clipped off sometimes because we've got other things to do and we have this short window. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, okay, we got our reading done, we got our math done, we got this done. Mm-hmm. I've been a little better. We've had to be really flexible about our space. So like, I think I shared in, the first or the second episode where we do sort of have like a dedicated homeschooling area in our finished basement where the kids each have a desk and I have my like table and we have our little calendar and it's great. And then we got the dog. And there's just so many yummy, delicious, mischievous things that we can get into when we're downstairs that now we shift to, we're sitting at the kitchen table. Oh, okay. And we're doing our lessons there.
That's where we do mostly,
Because he's upstairs, I can keep an eye on him. And every time I go downstairs, my heart, like to vacuum or clean or whatever, get something, my heart breaks a little bit because I'm like, we have this nice little area and we're not down here anymore, and that makes me kind of
but she might be again.
And I do have that thought, like, okay, we will be down here again eventually, but also like it's okay if we're not, and then maybe it would probably take a while for me to repurpose the space, or maybe I just save it for then when they're a little bit more independent. I'll be like, hey, go downstairs and work on this or whatever at your desk. There's a lot of I would think a lot of homeschoolers have guilt of surrounding something that maybe they're not doing. Yeah. And if you don't, that's fantastic.
But I can't imagine. I mean, I don't think that there's, I mean, if anyone's being honest, I think that there's, I mean, how would you not feel,
semi-guilty or something? Yeah,
you never feel like you're, right, or that's kind of like our culture, like you're just, and that comparison and that you're never enough. And I think that it's really like, I enjoy listening to podcasts. I listen to a lot of podcasts and I love, that advice about, and we give it ourselves about, you don't compare kids and everybody works at their own pace and da-da-da. And yet again, and this is, I don't know, again, it's because I have the teacher mindset or whatnot, but I can't help but at times, right, have those areas of frustration where it's like, but I think my child should be at a certain spot at this point, and why aren't they? And now I'm starting to panic about it. And I'm like, whoa, like walk what you walk the talk. They say, like walk what you preach. It's like there is no rush with this. Like you can give the advice so freely. Like you got to take it more yourself. And I think too. And I think I'm trying to be a a lot better about that. You know what helped me was I had a plan book. I think we had talked about this with some of our well, so you're gonna laugh at this because so I think we had talked with some of our other homeschooling moms once about like record keeping, and because the state we live in is pretty flexible, like they don't need us to send in portfolios of work or whatever. I always save work like every month. I keep it in a folder, and so I have all the work we do. I save everything. But I think the two of us who were the former teachers out of some of our other mom friends in our group, we're like, we don't really record very much. Like, here we are coming from the background of like lesson plans and yada yada, and we aren't really recording anything. And they were keeping like much more meticulous record keeping. So anyway, so I bought this like really nice plan book this year, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna like plan it out more. I'm gonna be more, like I'm gonna like to see it. Da, da, da. So that actually stressed me out way. I ended up throwing it out. I kept it. I did it for like the month of September, maybe like half of October. Thank God I didn't have it in November.
Yeah,
because I would have been like constantly erasing stuff. Yeah. But I found that I wasn't so much planning as I was just recording what we did after.
Yeah, same. That's what I used.
But then I felt like garbage when I would go to record what we did after, and I didn't really feel like I couldn't write down like, oh, we did this workbook page, or I would try to record like, well, we talked about place value, with the blocks at the coffee table. Like, I don't know. I didn't feel like I could. I just didn't. Yeah. It made me feel like bad. And I thought, what if I'm just not recording? I mean, it's not like I've got 12 kids. I've got two. I have a general sense of where we're going. We do follow a curriculum. So I have, bookmarks. I know where we're, or sometimes I would write down literally like the math lesson number and the page. I'm like, okay, that's right in the book. Why am I rewriting it here just to like make myself be like, look and see what we did? I felt like it was causing me more anxiety or more stress, and so I threw it out. And I mean, who knows if I'll come back to being more ridiculous about recording, but I felt like it was actually, I generally know where we're going in that direction, and I can thank that to having been a teacher, and I know the skills that we're working on, and the general trajectory that we're going in, and as long as I feel like we're making progress, it doesn't have to look like we're doing it every day, or it doesn't have to look, I don't know. And because that to me, I almost feel like the more school related or teacher related tools I have, the more I feel like I have to homeschool that way. And that's not how that's not how it's going to be. I know that's not how it's going to be successful for me in the long run. It's like the farther away I get from doing traditional school type of activities or things with them, I almost feel like the better
you can embrace it more.
Like, and I don't know, people don't always seem to get that, because I've tried to explain that to non-homeschooling parents, and even me the first couple of years, it was sort of like, you just do school at home, and now I'm just sort of like, no, it's a completely different lifestyle. It's a completely different lifestyle. And, I don't know.
It definitely is, and I'm starting to lean towards that way more. I think just with I mean, we shared before, just with like our time and having to be a little bit more thoughtful. I did want to talk. We did talk about like carving out, like Friday mornings. We had a commitment with like an ongoing appointment OT for Owen, and then we stopped doing that. So that opens up our Friday mornings a little bit. And so I wanted to kind of rework in writing more, like say that as like, no, this is our geography day or our science day, to be so it doesn't feel like it's just being tacked on to the end, and like trying to be a little bit more thoughtful in that way. But there's always guilt about like not doing enough. And then my plan book, I'm still doing it, but the thing is, like, I have my lesson plans, and I'll usually just write, like, for pinwheels, I'll write, like, pinwheel, I'll put, like, unit 14, day 1, and that's all I'll put. And then what I'll do is, as I'm prepping my materials, like, I'll prep my materials for the week, but, like, they're prepped for the week, but it's not just for that week, right? Like, because if we don't get to like day 2 on whatever that day is, well, then the next day becomes day 2. You know what I mean? And so, but the materials are all there, and it's in a folder, and I can just open it up, and I have all the stuff that I need for mostly pinwheels, because it's like you need this from this and this from this, and it requires some effort to sort of pull everything together, and it's easier than in the moment. I feel very rushed, and like they're just sitting there, and I'm like, wait a minute, we got to find appendix A and this out and that kind of stuff. So I should just save the lesson plans, you know what I mean? But I don't really, because
it ebbs and flows, I think, with what you're trying to do. I really feel like more than ever that, like, because I feel like I've read, I don't even know how many homeschooling books like I've read, just because that's the kind of person I am. When I want to learn about something, I inundate myself with like books on it, and so much the best advice I feel like I repeatedly get from moms that have been doing this, or parents have been doing this a lot longer than us, is just that, right, like you have to adopt it as a lifestyle, and that, right, the learning is not, if you're disconnected from your kids all day long and then you make them sit at the table for 20 minutes to get this math lesson done, and then they're off again and you don't see them for the rest of the day. It's like, no, that's not the point of what you're trying to do.
Right.
And I feel like I've had days like that where I'm literally just like pulling them to the table 3 or 4 times to get certain activities done, and then they're off doing whatever, instead of trying to embrace what they're doing and work in, the other stuff, or be more present with them. And I just, I feel like you have to find, I think for parents who try to do this, like, I mean, I can see myself why parents try it and then go back, or, you know what I mean? Or because it's not always easy, or I think it's rarely easy, but it's, the more that I'm trying to find, now that we're in year 3 of doing this, like the more, it has to work for you as a parent, it has to work for the kids. And I think that takes a lot of time. I mean, at least it is for me. Like it's taking a lot of time between, it's not, I'm trying to think of the best way to explain it, but it's like, there's things that I know work really well for the kids, but then like I'm stressed out really bad. It's not working for me and the family, so then it's not good for them in the long run, because I'm wreck. And then, I've been trying to be a lot more laid back with like letting them, because one of the things, with kids, like when you're always cutting them off from doing something, like, okay, stop this now because we got to go here, and stop this now. And I used to hate that in the classroom, because, right, you see a kid finally understanding a math concept, and it's like magic, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, we have to line up and get to music, like stop.
Right.
Or they're finally writing something after 20 minutes of sitting there, like, with tears in their eyes because they're so frustrated, and now all of a sudden they're on to something, and you're like, oh. So anyway, so how kids are with, like, when you gotta cut them off and something. And I feel like that was happening a lot with my kids. Like they'd be like playing a game, and I'd be like, okay, it's time to sit down for reading, versus like letting them finish what they were doing. And I used to get like the groans and the whining and the da-da-da-da. So I kind of experimented for like a week where I was like, I'm going to let them, whatever they're doing to completion, they're going to be able to do it. Like until it, and this may sound crazy if parents are like, well, then they'll never stop playing. But there's usually a time when there's like a break. Like they come up, and I don't know if they're in the basement, like they'll come up and that's what you're doing or something, or they'll come up for a snack, or they'll want you to play around with the game or something. There's more, I was finding there's more moments to kind of interject, versus like, okay, it's 8, let's go sit at the table and get our writing done. And so for like a week straight, I was trying to find those little moments. And sometimes it would be like a long time, like, oh my God, are we going to get school done today? Like they're really playing nicely. I don't want to, I'm trying to get them. But sure enough, every single time there would be a moment where, like, I don't know, Owen would come walking in, or Leo, what are you doing, Mom? Like, I'm in the other, room reading or something. And I'm like, oh, I'm just getting reading ready. Come on over. We're going to do our letters or whatever it is. And it would. And there wouldn't be the moaning or groaning, because it was like a natural break in their play process, if that makes sense. And because I think I only was able to do this because we were so sick this whole month. We had, days and days and days we didn't leave the house, because everyone was kind of just, we were watching a lot of TV, playing a lot of board games. So we didn't have a schedule to keep for a few weeks in a row, really. We had canceled everything. And so it was interesting to see. And then sure enough, it was like our first day back into like the real world. And, after some of these illnesses, where we had like an appointment, and then we had like a play date, and then we had something else. And I still wanted to get in this work. And then I felt that pressure of the schedule again, and stopping them, being, okay, you can't finish this game because we got to get this done before we go to this activity. And the whining started up again, the whatever. And it kind of hit me as far as like, well, like just how much more, or how beneficial it was, like letting the kids' rhythm kind of play out, and then pulling on those breaks in the action. Which is incredibly hard. I know some homeschooling families that are, so busy, and they have to have that schedule, and there's just no way around it. And some kids are fine with that kind of schedule, but this is where I'm saying, like, that idea of but works for one family might be completely different than what works for another. And I'm finding with us, we don't have a ton of activities. The boys are in a few things, and we obviously have our play dates and group meetups and things, but generally I'd say our days are pretty, I don't have to work on, I don't work on the side as well, so I don't have that schedule to keep. I just, I was just finding that was a really interesting observation for me, and that I was going to try to keep that going, even though now that the boys are better, and I'm looking at this week ahead, and we do have some commitments and appointments and things, and so that's kind of my goal for this week, is to see if I can still try to listen, see the rhythm of the day, how it's going, and where those natural breaks in the interaction are.
I definitely see the benefit. I think for us, like you said, it's just we're trying to just, I don't know, I think somebody I was talking to was like, your life is like a finely built house of cards. And if one thing comes out, then everything just like...
That's kind of a good...
It's like, that sort of is our... And I've gotten better with like, if we don't get to lessons, it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, if we don't get to our lessons today, okay. If I feel like really stressed out about like trying to shove it in, it's okay. Or if we have to break what I have planned into 2 days, that's fine. Like, this week's a good example. Like, yesterday, we were in a pinch a little bit because we had to take my life now revolves around my dog.
Yeah.
I had to take the dog for a bath. And we, Saturday morning, and my kids are up early, so they were up early, and they had breakfast, and I was like, okay, we really, we do need to, I had a couple things to do around the house, because there's that too, right? Just trying to like maintain a household. And so I was like, we are gonna do some lessons this morning. I have been trying to use the words lessons as opposed to school. I got that from my friend Danielle, who, and I think that's kind of a nice way to start to help them delineate, like, this is not necessarily school. We're gonna do our lessons, and that learning, I think you were saying, like, learning is happening all of the time. It doesn't just happen under this umbrella, but these are our, like, specific lessons that we do actually have to get done, and then you're welcome to go finish doing whatever it is. I'll usually give my kids a heads up. I'll usually let them know, like, hey guys, like, this is sort of what our morning looks like. I'm gonna do this, then I'm gonna do this, then we're gonna do some lessons. And so, like, they know it's coming, so it's not a surprise. I'll usually get some sort of like, I don't want to do lessons today, or like, oh, I don't know, do we have to do lessons?
Yeah.
They still call it school, so it's like, do we have to do school? And I'm like, yeah, we are going to do a little bit of lessons, and Owen will always be like, well, how much? And I'm like, well, like, it depends, and then once we sit down and do it, they're fine, you know what I mean? But so I try to give them the warning that it is coming, and it does need to fit into, but like yesterday, we just did our chapter book and our little activity that went along with it. Now we're reading the first book of the Boxcar Children. So we read the first chapter together, and then we did the little thing with character traits, and then I was like, okay, that's fine. Like, rather than trying to like squeeze in the pinwheels lesson, I was like, we'll do that tomorrow. We'll do pinwheels tomorrow. We'll do math, and that's fine. So just trying to lean into being a little bit more flexible and being a little less hard on myself if we don't get everything done. But I think for us, trying to fit it into when there are those natural breaks, I don't know if we would ever get anything done, because it's like we have like a window of time where we have to do things. And
it's funny because I have other teachers in my family that chime in on their perspectives, and they're very supportive of homeschooling, but they definitely have come from that framework and are still in that framework. And so I think there's a lot that I get sometimes questions or pushback about, like, but kids thrive with a schedule. Think about when kids are at school and how important it is that you go through the schedule and they know what's coming and they see all of it, and and isn't that so great for them? And I kind of pushed back the other day when I was to that point a little bit with, like, when you do have a lifestyle like mine a little bit more right now, almost, I think less of a schedule seems to be better now. Again, this could all change in 6 months. A super tight schedule. This is why you like have to be flexible. But right now, this is how it seems like it's going. But it was like, I kept thinking about that idea of kids in a schedule and why it's so important. And I know for me as a child, being very anxious, and I know when I had kids in my class that were very anxious, a schedule is really great at school because you're already in an environment that's not your safe space. You're at a separate space, so you're already in kind of an anxious state. And so knowing what to expect can feel really, really important and powerful for you to have like a successful day. But when you're at home and you're in your safe space, is it that important that you have like a rigid, they always know 8:00 we do reading, 8:30 we do writing, then we take a break, and then we have math. Is that so important? Maybe it still is for your family. I don't know. But I was just thinking about that because I was trying to push back a little bit on some teacher advice that I was getting from. And I was just, I don't know, I was mulling around that. And I was like, I think there are kids that really benefit from a schedule, especially when they're in a school environment, because it's not, their home. And I think that there's some that probably do a schedule is great at home too. And maybe it's age dependent. Like maybe when mine are a little older, like right now they're 7 and 5. Yeah. So they're still, and they're really young 7 and 5, they could play with their, little figurines all day long. I mean, there's still, so, maybe it's age dependent. I don't know. Yeah. But it's just, it's funny. I feel like you're probably, watch it be the thing when it's like, they're all grown and, we've done this 20 years. It's like, then we figured out. Yeah. Like magic. Right,
exactly. That will be the case. And I think it's, and I think it's just, whatever works for you. And I think we're a good example that what Anna's doing and her model is different than what my model is and what we're doing because of the lifestyles that we have and everything that we have going on. And, when we got the job, it would be way easier if my kids were in school full time, right? And it'd be way easier, if I wasn't working or it'd be, way easier if the kids were in school, but that's just not a sacrifice necessarily that I'm willing to make right now. So it's it's kind of at the expense of sometimes my sanity. We're gonna keep doing this, and we're gonna kind of make it work however we can. So I think that's the important thing. And again, we talked about it quite a bit in the first couple of episodes about just trying to figure things out. We certainly don't have everything clearly figured out as far as.
And each month is I mean, it's different months. I mean, weekly. I mean, I don't think I felt this way in the summertime, and then now I'm kind of feeling this way now, but it changes. So that's definitely been a big thing for us. And the new kitty cat for us has been kind of an exciting thing. The cat, the kids are all worked up on the cat. And, and I think that too, sometimes with the social stuff too, when you've got a week where it's you're sick or something, and so you're not going on play dates, and so you're like, oh my gosh, are my kids getting any social time this week because you're sick? And again, it's that idea of school. It's just I really wonder what would it be like for a child who doesn't have, or if we had grown up thinking about, I mean, I know for me as a kid, school was the only, I mean, that is the norm, that's what people think, but I always wonder that's why we got to talk to somebody who's been, I mean, I know we know people who have been homeschooled, but I feel like I would love to pick their brains a little bit more about when you hear about these dynamics, or did you think, because I always think of the norm and a kid riding a school bus and going to school and but for a homeschooling adult, or a kid who was homeschooled as an adult, when you think of school, wow, your frame of reference must be so different. What must that be like? Do you think of your kitchen table? Do you think of do you think of what do you think of? Because it's got to be so different. So it would definitely be fun to have a former homeschooler, now adult on, because even out of kind of our friend group that we have, I mean, we're all kind of first time homeschooling moms. I mean, we are. They didn't do it because they were right. So I don't know, but I
was going to say something and now I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, the kids popping around.
And something about being homeschooled. That's okay. It'll come back to me. Yeah, maybe, or maybe not.
I know. So that's been, I don't know. And I think this time of year, as excited as I am for all the holidays and things, it gets the kids kind of wonky, but they're like that in the classroom too. I mean, I can remember trying to teach in December and it was gosh. So
right. Trying to fit everything in.
Yeah. So I think
benchmarks and get this benchmark done between, the 2 days before Christmas, or we gotta prep for this, or make sure you're staying like on your, scope and sequence.
I know.
I think one of the other things we were talking about that we were gonna kind of touch upon is like this idea of like reinforcers at home or like reward systems.
Oh yeah.
Like I know you have a pom-pom jar.
Yeah.
I use stars.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how, so I am not a big fan of reward systems. Like I've seen them done in the classroom sometimes so poorly. Like I have seen, oh my gosh, like it's like, well, if your table quiets down first, your group gets 5 extra minutes of recess and nobody else does. Like there are like some really poor, classroom management styles that are just so either outdated or just a bad practice that still happen, because I hear them from like I was like that's still happening. Oh my god, like it's just not a good reinforcement. But I did always like the idea of the class working towards a goal like together, that they were successful together. It was like a group building thing.
Contingency.
So that was sort of my idea. I mean, I've done, and with your background with being a behavior analyst, you have more experience with the behavior stuff than me, but I did like in the classroom having as a goal of the class would work towards. So there were years that I did right, you call it like a pom-pom jar with those little fluffy pom-poms, and so we would only earn one if we successfully worked together well as a class, and we accomplished what we needed to and all this sort of stuff, and then eventually you get a reward. So I've adopted that with my kids, where they only get to put one in if we've worked together well, which means everyone's gotten done what they need to, we've been respectful to each other, kind to each other, all that stuff, we've gotten through the day and all of our work. And then we add that pom-pom to the jar, and at the end of the jar, when the jar is full, we get some kind of a reward. Okay. Tough, guys. So the pom-pom jar works well, and then they get a reward. But what I think I was saying to you earlier was just that I like the method. It's working well. They're motivated to get their work done, and get that pom-pom in the jar. I don't ever take a pom-pom out. Right. It's not a negative, thing. Like if they don't earn one that day, they just don't earn one. Yeah. But I don't make it we're dumping the pom-pom jar. Yeah. I don't do that. And I wouldn't have done that in the classroom either, because that's just counterintuitive or counterproductive to what you're trying to do. But what I have found is, that kind of that reward, which I know you have a sticker system you could explain, but eventually they earn a reward. And it's like, okay, well, what is that reward? And when it's something that happens every other week or so, my kids, it tends to be they want to get something like a stuffy, like a stuffed animal, something, and so trying to come up with some other activities that could be like how you had mentioned, like a menu option. So when the pom-pom jar is filled, these are the options that you get. And and then I go back to thinking about kids in the classroom, and the incentive you would use. One, and kids are in the classroom, they're not as comfortable with the teacher. They're not going to give, some kids give a teacher a hard time, but generally speaking, it goes back to that whole the kids won't listen to me. How are you going to make them do their work? So I think homeschoolers sometimes we rely on some of those little systems, maybe more so than you would have in the classroom, because in the classroom you kind of have to do it, or there's some bigger consequences. It gets to be a slippery slope, and without going too far down the behavior rabbit hole, because again, this isn't necessarily covered under my, I can speak freely because this isn't covered under my scope, but I have a hard time with this, right? Because I can see both sides, right? So my kids have something similar to a token economy. And if you're not familiar with that is, essentially it's like a sticker chart. It's not stickers, it's little magnetic stars, but they earn them for a variety of different things. Essentially it's sort of equates to money, right? So if you earn a star, it's equal to $1, although they're not allowed to necessarily spend their stars until they make it to 10. Because I'm not doing that. We're not going to Dollar Tree every 5 seconds to spend your $2. Yeah. And it's gotten, when I first came today and we were talking about, our episode, we probably should have just recorded it, but we spent some time talking about the two systems, and my frustration is, now
we're earning stars, and it's like as soon as they get 10, then they want to spend it, and then we're at Target, and like Grace can't make a decision, and then we're at Target for way longer than we need to be, and I'm getting frustrated, and like I'm ending up with like stuff that like I don't really need this, and how do we save? And so we talked about this idea of a menu, and where I get a little on my soapbox is I have a hard time sometimes when people who are like, I want my kids to be, intrinsically motivated. I want my kids to like
thinking about intrinsic motivation.
Yeah,
that's so funny.
I just want them to like be good just to be good, and I would push back on that slightly and ask you,
but there's others.
Go to work if you didn't get a paycheck.
Right.
You have a delay reinforcer of money, and some of the work that you do is enough to motivate you to show up to work every day. We just had this big government shutdown, and just like shout out to all of those like TSA workers and air traffic controllers that went to work and weren't getting a paycheck. Now, again, the delay to reinforcement, the idea was that it was all going to be back paid, right? So like, eventually you're going to get to your delay, and how long would you work for? So if you're one of those people and no, not every little thing in life is going to be rewarded with like a little trinket or a sticker or a star. But people who say that they want their 3-year-old or their 4-year-old to be, I'm not going to do anything like that. They're not going to get a sticker for that, because I want them to just, the task itself should be reinforced. Right. It's just like, just pause for a second and think, like, as an adult, like, would you go to work if you didn't get a paycheck? Or like, would you, do something that for nothing, and and it's something that I think we have to build, and we have to teach, like everything else, right? Like, so my thing in the menu is where we kind of landed on that it would be a nice thing if those behaviors that we want to see increase, the cooperation and the working together. And for me, kids usually earn things for like, you tidied your playroom in a certain amount of time, or like, that was really helpful that you were ready to go to take the dog for a walk, or like we did a really long walk with the dog and it was cold, and there wasn't a lot of like, you were really good sports about it, and that cooperation to an extent. I kind of use them for a variety of different things, which isn't necessarily best practice, but again, like it's just what works for us. So like, what do you do if you don't want to be at Target, every day? Yeah. Or not every day, but like every week, in the toy aisle, especially this close to Christmas. And so we came up with this idea of a menu. And I think what I am going to do is tonight, I think while my kids are eating dinner, is I'm going to just brainstorm with them of just like, okay, so let's rework this a little bit. And what are we going to do? And we might work on something like, okay, if you have a combined this many stars, you can do this, like watch a movie, or if you each have individually this many stars. But I like the idea of it being cooperative, because it's hard, aside from like, a toy or some Kindle time, because we homeschool, like if one earns like a special lunch, what is the other one doing?
Right. Yeah. No, it's like, no, that's why I do like the jar where they both add to it, but they have to work together to get it finished. Cause and that's why I was thinking of making the menu experience based, because can be tricky to come up with it, but it's like special lunch out with dad, or, it's probably easier in the summer because, things like going to mini golf or whatever. Going to
the movies.
Right, like make it experience-based, and not that you couldn't put on there, I guess, like I might actually, because I'm thinking the same thing, I'm going to try to work on a menu. I might even not have, because I don't want it to be I'm trying very hard to start decluttering all the toys. So I'm not wanting to bring more into the house. And that's taking some work on my part to get through what we already have. But I like the experiences, even though my kids right now are very heavy on the get stuff, which I feel like most kids in America are. And I want to try to see, I'll probably do the same thing, brainstorm with them, experiences, things they'd like to do. Then, it's funny because then they throw out things like, Wolf Lodge. And I'm like,
right. So that could be something, I think, like, that you'd have to how many? And for us, for STAR, like that could be something like, okay, well,
we had to combine them and save this many.
Like, okay, we had this many, how many times do we need to fill the pom-pom jar before we get that?
Right, and save
like,
it.
And I think, like, I was just, as you're talking, like, we could do a build your own Sunday, thing. That could be a reinforcer of just like, okay, we're going to, get a bunch of toppings and, we earned 20 stars. So it's build your own Sunday bar or something like that.
I like the experience because I love that analogy. I'm totally going to use that about like, would you go to work for no reason? But like, because probably not. Because it drives me nuts. It's like very like in a perfect world, like you think about that, like you want kids. Of course, you want your children to be intrinsically motivated and not have to receive some kind of a reward for doing something because that's not the real world. But then, well, actually, it kind of is the real world because most of us don't do something for nothing, and if we do,
it's usually some sort of social positive reinforcement, right? Like some sort of kind comment, or like you did something really thoughtful in somebody, like there's some kind of thing to be said for that intrinsic motivate, but your intrinsic motive was paired with some sort of extrinsic.
So what would you say to this? Because I used to be pretty down on this, and I guess I'm still kind of down on it because when it's money, right, and just buying something all the time, I guess that's why this. But I can remember having parents or kids that would tell me, and then I would check with their parents, and they were right, that they would get paid for their grades. So, like, an A was $5, a B was, whatever. And so when their report card came out, they would be, sitting pretty with a bunch of cash that they could spend on something. And I'd be like, okay. And I used to I don't think I loved it. So this was third grade. I didn't love it because there were kids who would, when they would get like a not so great grade on something, they're young still. There'd be like an emotion because they'd be like, I'm not gonna get my A and I'm not gonna get my $5. And so they're like freaking out about it. And they're not even seeing, any other purpose or value about what they're doing is they're so laser focused on the money they get for their report card. Yeah. And so I used to tell parents, like, don't do that. Don't pay them for their grades. Maybe could it be something like an experience, like, you do well on your report card, so we're going to go, take an overnight trip to Wolf Law. I don't know, whatever it might be, but it was like that individual, like, cash handout for the grade, and it was like, I don't know, and that didn't sit right with me, but now that I'm thinking about it.
The issue that the thing that I take issue with that is that, like, earning an A is a very wide open behavior. There are so many little behaviors that go into earning an A, right? Like what grades, the grades on X amount of tests, right? Grades on a certain report, how homework assignments. Like there's so many little things that go into earning an A that feels like hard to like you're reinforcing all of the tiny little behaviors, but like you're not, sort of like. So I think for that, I would have said, like, what is a thing that your child has trouble? What is the behavior that you're trying to increase? So for like me, the things that my kids are earning stars for are the things that I want them to continue to do. That's how reinforcement works, right? Like it's only a reinforcer if you see the behavior increase. So like tidying the playroom, that's an area that I want to see them build, or putting their laundry away, right? Because the goal is that then gradually you fade the reinforcer, you fade the stars, and the behavior kind of maintains, because every once in a while you give them a star for this, and then you gets paired with social reinforcement, like, hey, thanks so much, I really appreciate you putting your laundry away, you got a star. And then the next time it's like, wow, that was so helpful, thanks so much for putting your laundry away. And that's enough, right? And then eventually the social positive is enough to then maintain the behavior. So like the thing that I would say is, what are you trying to increase? That should be the thing that they're earning your pom-poms or your money, I guess. So like it shouldn't just be arbitrary, like, oh, you got an A, you get $5. Because if you've got a really bright kid and that's not a thing that they need to work on, then clearly that's already in their repertoire. You don't need to work on that. But if you have a kid that, they're earning all these A's, but they're really fresh. Like, they're really rude, fresh. They're making some really inappropriate comments or something. That's the thing. So what you want to increase is appropriate comments. So that's what you want to reinforce. That's what you want to, like, pay them for. Like, I'll give you $1, if you can go the morning and make like 5 positive comments. That's a terrible example, but like that's off the cuff, like what I'm thinking.
Yeah, it's got to be more specific.
It has to be more specific,
and that's where I think parents. And I know for me too, because like I didn't know a lot of that stuff too, and I think I think there's a sense that like a lot of people think, oh, get them on a behavior chart or start this, like all those things. But and I think that if it's done the right way, yes, it's useful. Yeah. But I think that the average, Joe Schmo, me certainly, like I wouldn't have. It's like, well, was that positive? Does that count? Is that what, like, right? I think that what you were saying, the main question is like, what is it that the behavior you're trying to change or what you want to see more of? And I think, because there are some people that'll say like, we don't have any kind of reward system. Like, should I start that? And I want to be like, no, I mean, everything, if you don't need to, you don't need to. Like, this is something that it's of use for us and my family right now, because this is something where, but you certainly don't have to.
Positive comments are one of the most powerful, especially for, if you have like a typically developing kiddo, like your affection and your attention and pointing things out and just saying like, wow, that was really helpful and I really appreciate that and nice job and you worked really hard on that. That's all. That is a reward. That is a reward. Reward. I also don't love that word, but like that, because people just, it carries like such weird connotations in this culture. But like that, if you see those behaviors increase and they start to maybe tidy a little bit more, or they're making better comments, or they're maybe being a little helpful, or they put their shoes on faster, then you know that your attention is and those comments are enough of a reinforcer to maintain that behavior. So no, like I wouldn't like put them on like a behavior chart, and that was a big thing that would happen. People think like, oh, just put them on a behavior chart, and it's like there's just so many things that go into that is, again, outside of the scope of this podcast, but it's just something to keep in mind. Like if you are like us and you're thinking about like, I don't love how this is going, like really sit and be a little bit more thoughtful about what do you want to change? And I actually have to sit and think about it too, of just like what do I want my kids to be working on. Me too.
Like, we've been using this system since the fall, and I am liking it, and it is working, but because you were having an issue with like where one was interrupting your lessons with the other, and that was becoming a barrier. I think that was perfect, right? Because we had talked about like, well, then the pom-pom goes in if like, if Owen was able to get his things done and and he gave space so I could Leo could get his things done, then we earned a pom-pom because cooperatively, we worked together and your mom was able to do, and that's fine as long as it's defined and the kid knows what they're earning. Because that's the other thing. Sometimes kids are just like, I got a sticker, but like, for what? Why? Like, I just got a sticker because I got a sticker. If they don't know why they're earning, then you have to go back to the drawing board, because that's not, you've got to be specific. And I'll say to my, like, hey, I really liked how you guys I'll get in the car, we've got like the dog and they're all bundled up, right? And we're going for a walk and it's 7 a.m. And I'm like, hey, I really like how you guys were able to get dressed and be ready. And now we're in the car, I'm going to give you 2 stars. But I like tell them like why, right? Because it's not just arbitrarily being like, you got 2 stars, like, great job. Yeah. But for what? For what? Yeah. Like, I don't know why I have stars. So like, I think pairing it with what, again, that's behavior. If you pair it enough times with this extrinsic thing that you then cash in for something else, then slowly you can you can fade it or you can change it to something else. Like, hey, we've mastered, they're really great at giving space for work, right? That's not an issue anymore. Something else has cropped up. So then you just have a conversation and say, hey guys, like, we worked really hard. You're doing so well at giving space. I want us to work on this. This is the next thing we need to work on, because we all have goals, right? We all, as adults, and I know for us in particular, like type A adults, we're always working towards something, right? So like, what am I working on? And
and that changes, right? I've maybe gotten really good at this thing, and now I'm going to move on and I'm going to do this. I'm good at getting my, my adult reading in, and I've read more books. Okay, so now I'm good with that. I'm going to try to change some other behavior.
Yeah.
And even asking kids, like, what do you think you need to work on? What is something that you want to work on that's hard for you?
That's a good question to ask kids. I don't think is asked.
Getting
their perspective.
Right.
I used to do that. It reminds me of I used to do this thing, which I wouldn't actually do anymore because I have a different philosophy about classroom management than I did back then. But all things considered, it was still a nice, I think, idea. But I would come up at the beginning of the year, we would come up with a whole idea of a list of ideas of things that we needed to be implemented, rules essentially for the classroom. That because if we want this to be a space where we're comfortable and we feel safe and we can learn, what needs to be in place. And so we would come up and we would brainstorm, and we do a lot of talking about it the first week or so of school, and we would end up kind of breaking it or combining it rather into 5 agreements.
For sure.
And then we would write them out, and then all the kids would come up and sign the agreement. And it's like a very formal thing. And for what it was, I think when it comes to creating classroom, standards like that, it's a nice way to do it.
Yeah, I absolutely think that should be the way.
But it would be done. But what was the second part of it that I often forgot to do, but when I did do it, I was always like, do this more, Anna, was if we had time at the end of the day, we used to look at them and say, which agreement, like, what did you do well today? Or what did we do well today? Which agreement do we really, and which one need some more work? Yeah. And when we would have those conversations at the end of the day, it was really beneficial because it's so easy to make a list of like rules or whatever, and then you never look at it again unless it's a problem. You're not following it, right?
Exactly.
And so it was those days that I would be like, let's look at which one did we do really well. We really, the first one about raising hands and listening to each other, that went really well today. Why do you think that went well? And like, so seeing that list is like a positive, like when we did things really well on it, and then also what one could we have worked better on, or worked more on tomorrow because we didn't do so great with it today, or is there one? And that used to be, it was like the second part of the classroom management piece, and there wasn't always time for it. And if I could go back, I would have done that every single day. At the end of the day, would look at that list. What did we do well? What did we? And I think that that's something with my guys too. Like when we add that pom to the jar, being like maybe asking them for a minute, what really went well today that we got this pom. And I like that, the piece about it changes because we don't all work on the same things all the time. We master something and move on, and we may not need it in future, but that reward system is interesting. I know a lot of homeschooling families that are trying to use one or struggle with one or maybe have one that's really successful. And then I know a lot of classrooms that have one or don't have one, and same type of thing. It's very different, but I don't know if there isn't clearly one that's just the best system.
No, definitely not. I mean, there's ones that are, a token economy is well researched and all that kind, but it's a very specific thing, and there's a whole protocol that goes into it, and as far as the number and stuff like that, and what I did it a little bit differently because you kind of can with typically developing kids, although if you're not a behavior analyst, I would say just kind of stick to what you know but I think it's a sticker chart, or even you'll go to some people have told me we're having trouble potty training, and so the pediatrician will tell us try a sticker chart, and they get a sticker if they sit on the toilet, and it's okay. And I remember the potty training book that I used is called Oh Crap Potty Training. And it, the method works great, but I remember reading it while I was in school to become a behavior analyst, and there were certain things in there that I underlined, and I was I don't necessarily agree with it. And to her credit, she was talking a lot about these arbitrary sticker charts and stuff like that, and we use a very specific procedure and protocol for helping kids in ABA to use the toilet, but again, we're talking about a very niche sort of population. I didn't use reinforcers too much with my kids when they were, because again, that social positive, and it should be enough, right? So again, we went kind of way off the train here, but it was just something we were talking about, and I think I can't help but sort of sometimes get on my soapbox about rewards and reinforcer. It's just, I think there's a general misunderstanding sometimes about rewards and how things should work, and intrinsic versus extrinsic, and I don't want my kids to always feel like they need to get something. And I do think, to your point too, it is very heavily used in the classroom as far as like little trinkets and the prize box.
Oh,
and it's
It is. Extra recess
time. Yeah. I would rather do that. I always tell, like, it doesn't have to be, like, for some collaboration that I've done, I'll be like, just do, like, a homework coupon.
Yeah.
Or something. If you really need something, do a homework coupon or, like, a special lunch with the teacher.
Right.
Or,
it's an experience.
Yeah, or the group contingency. There's a lot of research, too, about group contingencies that you were talking about in the classroom and, earning it and earning this, because the kids kind of can band together. But those are all, like, those are all, if you're thinking about, like, a response to intervention, those are all, like, your tier 1 interventions. You wouldn't necessarily use that for a kid that has really severe, like, challenging problem behaviors. Right. These are, like, generally nice classroom management strategies that build classroom community. And, again, but you have to be careful because, right, if you have one that's a little, like, if you have a kiddo that does have some challenges, like, there might be some sabotage. So there's a whole, but anyway, like
the kids, like you've got a kid who doesn't stop talking in the classroom, and nobody wants him in their group because they only get rewarded if their class is the first, if their table's the first one to quiet down. So now this poor child who has a hard time controlling that impulse to talk is being ostracized because nobody wants him at their group.
Right. So they just like when it backfires. There's so much that goes into it. And if anybody has any specific questions, there's only so much advice that I can give you as far as but as far as like a home, what should I do or how could I make this work? But I do like the idea of a menu.
Yeah.
Because then kids can kind of choose. They get some of that autonomy. I like the idea of working it together.
We'll have to touch base and see if we've successfully made a menu and then if we've implemented it, how it works.
Right, that'll have to be on our next one. Our next real talk. But anyway.
What'll be really helpful for us is just because playing around with the different types of podcast formats, and we do try to be very informative with our episodes, but also being very open and human and moms that are trying to figure all this out as well. Comments or feedback is always really welcome as far as what you want to see more of or less of or whatnot. Throwing them in the comments is super helpful because it helps us kind of, navigate doing some more of the real talk where we're just sharing what's going on in our lives or certain topics that you really want a lot of. I know we have an episode coming up that I think we have quite a few questions that were asked specifically to us that we're going to try to address and then lots of other content we'd like to put out there. But if you haven't yet subscribed to the podcast, the buttons below, that notification bell, if you can click that would help greatly as well. And we're done with Thanksgiving. Now we've got December 1st is coming up and a dark month and lots of fun. So we'll see how we manage it. But anyway, so thank you for joining us in our Real Talk podcast and episode, and we will see you next time.
Yeah, sounds good.
Thanks for engaging with us.